It's nearly 2 o'clock, and the constant stream of doggers is so annoying.
I was expecting to be really excited about this. Greetings and welcome to my sink.
Sirens blaring.
Hello and welcome to another Battle Games in Middle-earth YouTube video. Today I'm going to be running through the list that I'm going to take off to a very competitive tournament in a couple of weeks' time. Very excited. I've got to build a couple of models for it, but not much. And I've got a super uber killy army list that I'm preparing for it. I've been running the Pits of Dol Guldur very recently, and I've got a few of these Dol Guldur models that I still want to paint, so I'm going to show you the process that I'm going to do, and then I'm going to walk through the army list that I've got, and it's going to be... What? Can you hear that? Can you hear something? Coming from upstairs somewhere. Oh.
Finally, I've been tucked away in here far too long, maggot.
It's calling out my name. I guess I have to.
So it's settled then. I'm taking my Mordor Siege Bow to the Battle of Unnumbered Tears, but these are not that great. They only hit on 5s. So I thought, if they hit on 5s, if I have 3 of them, at least 1 will hit per turn. So that's what I'm going to do. But first, let's have a think about the rest of the army. Of course, theming it around the assault on Minas Tirith, I thought I've got to go with Gothmog, the Lieutenant of Sauron with his warg and shield. I'm going to take a hella lot of Morannon Orcs with him, about 30 Morannon Orcs with a mixture of different weapons. I'm going to have the Gothmog's Enforcer, who can call heroic moves for Gothmog for point of will. Guritz, who has the extra special Maelstrom rules and is for some reason strength 5. And I'm also going to take a ring wraith, because of course there's sort of, in the books, there's kind of meant to be a ring wraith there, but it's not quite clear who it is and all that sort of stuff. So the ring wraith is going to join along with another 10 plain normal orcs, just a vanilla ring wraith with a couple of points of might and no extra will or fate. And of course it wouldn't be a siege without a catapult, so I'm going to have a catapult and 3 siege bows. But now let's crack on turning the siege bow dream into reality.
Mordor Siege Bows. Not exactly renowned for their quality on the tabletop, but let's see if we can free this little guy. Missed these bits. 4. Classic. Perfect. Let's get cracking.
Yeah, screw the meta pick. Everyone seems to think that Pits of Dol Guldur is the army to use these days, so screw that. I'm going for something that I know surely isn't going to be winning me many games. So I've got myself at least 1 Mordor Siege Bow. And this is in a blister pack. I also have one that's sort of semi-made. We'll start with the one that's from the blister pack first. So I put it together, and actually, it's a surprisingly nice model. I mean, it's probably underused, maybe underloved. So at least I'm giving it some attention here. And it's certainly been tucked away for far too long in my bits box drawer of undesirables in my pile of shame. So I thought I'd get it out, and it looks great. Assembling it is really dead easy. It's literally about 5 parts for the actual bow, and then 3 guys that just glue into the slotters. All looks very nice, and I must say, the detail is actually surprisingly good. Once we get to them, we've got the guy with the sort of the bolt itself, we've got the guy with the hammer, we've got another guy with a bolt. So yeah, we've got 3 dudes, and the little armour plates on the front are really detailed. The wood effect on all of the bits are detailed. So yeah, it's a really nice model, highly recommended. But I noticed in this spare one that I've had, and I can't honestly remember where I got it from, it doesn't have the legs, so it would be fine without the legs, but I thought I'm going to have to try and replace this sort of H-shaped, well, it's kind of a double H, but it's like a frame that it's sort of propped up on. So I thought I'd replace that, and my option, they were pretty limited, so I thought, well, you know what, let's just give it a bit of a lollipop stick do-over. So, bish, bash, bosh, bam, here we go. Look, there is the lollipop stick being transformed into the legs, and just remember to bevel the edges, and I sort of stuck it on the back of the thing. Not looking too bad side by side with the other bolt thrower that's pretty brand new. The details held up over the years, even though I've rinsed it over the years with Dettol and peeled off some glue and all that sort of stuff. So then it's on to painting. So I do the wood effect in the way that I'd normally do most woods these days, is dryad bark as a base. It's right there in the name, bark, not the paint for dogs, although I suppose it would be good for a dog, but it is great for trees and bark and wood. Then I move on to the metal, and I'm doing a base coat with a brassy colour. I always think Mordor needs to just have different coloured metals as a base, even if I highlight it up to the silvers. I thought I'd give it a go with a dark brassy colour first. So I start with that, which is an old foundation paint, I think. There'll be an equivalent somewhere. Then using bubonic brown, I don't know what it is these days, Andrew Dust or something like that. I paint up the little bits of string on the sides of the bolt thrower on both of them, so getting the little sort of attention to detail as well. And actually the little bits of string, they look really nice once they're done. I'll give it a good wash with the remains of my Badab Black wash. I've only got one of these old Citadel washes left for Badab Black now, but as you can see, gives it a good weathering effect. And actually that wouldn't, most people would call that sort of fine. It's not a bad little job, and you can see there with the guys behind it. But I want to add to the wood and give it another highlight level, because these are the only things that I'm painting for this tournament. So I thought I might as well actually do some really nice work for it. So I do that, highlight up all the wood grains. The detail is actually incredible on these siege bows. They've got some really nice wood grain effects. So I paint all them up, highlight them up with Gorethor Brown, and then I've got a new paint here that I don't think I've used before. It's a new Necron themed paint called Canoptech Alloy. It's just a slightly off sort of, it's like a browny silvery rusty colour to highlight the metal bits, and then I finish it off with a metal highlight with a mixture of mithril silver. I think that's runefang steel mixed in there as well. So really nice job actually. I'm genuinely really proud of how these look. We'll see them all in a second, but first I'm going to just give you a few ideas on what I do with the orcs. So I generally base colour using the same colours, so I've got a green, a blue and a grey there, sort of mix them up for the trousers on one, the jacket on the others, and vice versa. Put a bit of green in there, a bit of brown, using more of the brass as well to highlight them up. I use a bit more of the sort of dark fleshy kind of brown, sort of more leathery browns for the leather, and then the greys and light blues and all that sort of stuff. Finish it off there with a little layer of runefang steel, just to give a sense that those models are a little bit chipped. The kind of the metal's nice and polished and shiny and sharp at the edges, but dirty in the middle. Perfect. But this is just 2 of the siege bows, and one of them doesn't have any crew. So I put out a call to arms for someone with a spare bolt thrower and crew, and I sort of got what I wanted. More on that in a second, but first let's deal with the paint job on the one I did get.
Greetings and welcome to my sink. I have a bottle of Dettol at the ready. Some people like to use BioStrip. I don't own any BioStrip, but I definitely own Dettol, and I'm not going to waste my money buying BioStrip when Dettol definitely works. People say that it doesn't. It bloody well does, and I'm going to show you it in action. So I flip the camera around, and I've got this. This is a tray. I think it formerly said curry or whatever on. And this has been in here for it's 4 p.m. now on an afternoon, and it's been in there since something along the lines of maybe 8 o'clock last night. So it'll stink, but let's see what happens. I've got the soapy water underneath, and that will become clear why in a second. don't want to spill anything everywhere. So that's what it looks like. You can see there's bits all floating around. See, it's just completely fine to touch as long as you've not got incredibly sensitive skin, and don't touch your eyes. Obviously, that would be stupid. Now, we've got this. It's all we need. So, I'm going to get this. I'm going to get my Dettol. I'm going to spin the spot to there. And then look at this. Look at it. Look at that. People, I don't know what people are saying. So this is metal, but it does work for plastics, although it softens the plastic a little bit, but then so does soaking it in anything, if I'm completely honest. So the trick here is to not dunk that in the water, but to go back to the Dettol, get a bit more spludge on there, and then just keep scrubbing away. And what we'll find in probably a matter of seconds is the paint completely vanishing. Now, no offence to Allan Cameron, a patron supporter who provided me with this stuff. I mean, you can see I'm getting pink stuff all over my hands, and you know, you could probably damage your skin by doing this. But I mean, it's also, if you water it down, it is used for doing pimples and all that sort of stuff. So that's what it says in the pack anyway. So look at that. You can see the paint dripping off my fingers into the water, just to show you how clear it is. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to dunk that back in the water again, in the Dettol again, just to pick up any last residue. And then look at that, it's almost completely gone, and it's just like the residue left now. So give that a dunk, and then once we've got most of the paint off, including the bits in the crevices, look at that, we'll go dunk. We'll dunk it. Look, that's hot water with a bit of, well, warm water with a bit of soap in it. And look at that, absolutely incredible. Bit of fairy liquid just to scrub off the residue, because it's not particularly greasy or anything. It's just, it doesn't take the paint as well if you haven't washed it off, and also it stinks a bit. So Dettol is not the most pleasant of smelling things, but I don't know what Biostrip smells like. Maybe it smells of nothing. I don't really care that much. Dettol is, it's just fine, isn't it? Right, there we go. Look at that. That is one perfectly clean, or as good as new. I mean, maybe a little bit in the corner, I'll admit, but that's just poor scribbing on my behalf. And then that is ready to be assembled. And I'll do the rest with the other stuff, obviously.
The filth of Cameron washes away. I mean, Allan Cameron. I mean, Saruman. I mean, oh, okay, sorry. No, his paint job was absolutely fine. I like to have my own paint job. Thanks again, Allan, for providing the miniature. So I've scrubbed up my Mordor Siege Bow that I bought from Allan Cameron. Big shout out to Allan. Thank you very much for sending that over at a decent price, because it's ridiculously expensive for such a, well, let's face it, pretty poor model that we've got here, and certainly in the game, although we'll find out maybe how well it does later. So, but I wanted to just briefly show you what I've done with the final one. So let's just flick over to the cam here. So here is the sort of final finished work on this one. This is the one that I've scrubbed up in the sink, so it's come out looking pretty much just as good as the others. We put them side by side with the other ones, and they're all at slightly different angles, which kind of don't mind that. That's absolutely fine with me. You can have some, you know, ones trying to shoot over the line or whatever it is, so that's good. And even when we look at the ones from the side, I mean, it's not super obvious which, of course, is the one with the balsa leg, so absolutely fine with me. So that is my three bows, and of course, so I've got my crew here, so I've got these three, but alas, the expense, the ridiculous expense of the bows in general. There was something like 30 quid on eBay, and some people were wanting the same for me on the trade pages, which I'm just not having, because they're just not worth it. So I got these ones. I might be able to borrow some more. I've got some other Siege crew. I could potentially have converted some models, just using Orc models, but decided in the end, I'm going to try something a bit different, and I ordered myself this little guy from a company on Etsy. So let's try a little unboxing. So there we go. Right, okay, we've got the nice little cuts down into that. So we're opening up. Oh, right, okay. Right, okay. So bubble wrap. Look at that. That's actually quite a nice little selection. So let's dig into the boxes and see what we've got. Okay, so we have a Orc. There we go. So I must say, I'll immediately say this is too small.
Maybe not too small, but compare them like for like, it's a little bit smaller than I was expecting. It's got, what's that, a rock? Is that a rock on the base? Yeah, I mean, the quality's fine. I was expecting to be really excited about this, but hey, this is the genuine reaction. Maybe it'll be different once I pack them up. Maybe the other models are different, so let's have a look. Let's find the next one. So we've got, printing goes ever on and on, Sculpts number 2. Here we go. So again, same sort of size. Yeah, see, this is interesting, actually. Genuinely expecting to be quite sort of full of praise of these, because the sculpts look really nice on the model, but again, much, much smaller. So if you compare my Orc Siege Bow, I mean, he's got the bolt, so he's fine. Will it look okay next to this? I mean, like that? Well, I don't know, that's just a bit small, isn't it? Well, we'll have to see. So, and then some bases. So there's six normal, I assume they're just normal bases, they don't have anything special going on. Yeah, they're just bases. They're too big. Those bases are too big. So that's good. I mean, it does say 28mm, but the 28mm is, are they inch? Maybe they're inches. Maybe they are slightly bigger. Oh, that's interesting, I wonder. Well, anyway, so I'm not going to use those bases because they're not the right size. That's a shame. But generally, at least I've got models that I can use, and I guess I'll have to withhold judgment until I've painted them. So let's cracking. Painted them. So I've done the undercoating and the basing of them, and I'll be honest, they look a little bit better than I thought they would based on that initial reaction. I don't know whether you could tell, not particularly happy with it initially, but looking at these guys, just trying to get the focus right, they actually feel all right. Bit brittle, that's what I've noticed, bit brittle, and I've had this issue before with 3D printed models. I think it's still here. I got a Galadriel, which you may be able to see in an upcoming video. It could be a while before you see it. And you can see here, I started painting it, and the tip of the sword on the back broke, which it's just, it feels too fine. And I guess that's why models like the classic range, models from the classic range that were made by hand, they're so slightly chunkier proportions, because otherwise stuff just breaks. So you can see the difference in the kind of the size of the hammer and the size of the spear and all that sort of stuff in these guys compared to the guys around it, just the size and heft. But having said that, it's a nice design. So let's get them painted up and see how they come up. So the final result of these guys, I know I wasn't particularly well enamoured with the models before I got the paint on them. Showed you what they look like after black, and I kind of improved my opinion. Well, now let's get the final tally after I've painted everything. I painted them in sort of basically the similar sort of style, and maybe not quite to the same standard as the metal miniatures here. So just for context, that's my traditional crew made of metal miniatures, which I'm very happy with. So there you go. That's what we're comparing with. So let's put them behind there. And these guys, look, I mean, they're not amazing. They're not terrible though. So I haven't taken them all the way up to the full highlight. So I've done sort of a base coat, a highlight. Sorry, base coat, wash, highlight for pretty much everything. The armour looks nice. I'm quite happy with that. And there is a lot of detail. I mean, the faces, I'm pretty happy with them. The sort of teeth and the eyes look alright. And then obviously the same sort of model there, but with a different colour. So I've done a sort of darker red skin there, grey glove and a bit green and stuff like that. So they look fine. These guys, so the facial expressions are absolutely fantastic on these models. I mean, you can really make out the detail of the sort of the wrinkles and the sort of forehead, the sort of folds of the skin and the eyebrows around there, and the sort of depth of the cheeks. Which, when you compare and contrast with this, like, I mean, you can just about make out that he's got lips, and so that's all you can paint, but that's kind of it. Whereas these guys, they really do look much more detailed, and you can see the individual sort of fanged-like teeth, and then the sort of the shape. And that's not from good painting, that is from just, you know, the detail that is there, and shaded because of the wash, essentially. So they're looking good, and as you can see, I've wazzed
Why is a skull on there? Which, you know, I know it doesn't make sense that you've got a skull that's got blood on it, but, you know, whatever. Just to make it look a bit Mordory and stuff. So when we put these guys next to the siege bows that they're going to be accompanying, let's just say that one's that one. So, I mean, they don't look ridiculous. It's just, they're just smaller. They just look smaller. They don't look quite the right size. They look a bit too thin. These guys look a bit more hefty, and maybe that's a good thing. But there you go. There's my 3 siege bows. Let me know what you think of the 3D prints. What would you prefer, the original models? I mean, the cost that you're going to get them, not convinced that I'm entirely enamoured with the idea of spending so much money on Mordor Siege Bow crew at like 10 quid. More than 10 quid for 3 models. It just seems ridiculous. I mean, even these were quite expensive, so let's see. Anyway, let me know in the comments below what you think of that. I'm heading off to the tournament now. Very excited for Unnumbered Tears. 1,000 points. I've got my 3 siege bows. I've got a catapult. I've got a Morannon horde with a ring wraith in support. It's going to be awesome, and I'm going to be camping as well, bringing out the tent. It's going to be great. I'm really excited about this tournament. Let's crack on and hit the road. Redwood tree.
Don't you recognize me?
Like this tomorrow. Well, at least we're pretty much here. Pretty unremarkable town, Sutton in Ashfield. Known for its coal mining industry, of course. Now, it's a hub of Middle-earth strategy battle game, and I can't wait to get my siege bows on the table. But in the meantime, Blink-182.
Books and brandy books. Grubs, chubs, hornblowers, bulgers, brace girdles, and proud thugs.
Proud feet!
Welcome to the Battle of Unnumbered Tears.
An intro like no other, a duck race sweepstake announced. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And then it was on to game number 1.
This is how I win. This is how I win.
So game 1, which is Fog of War, was against Alistair King, former Great British Hobbit League champion and of course a pro dwarf player, and he brought not just 1 Vault Warden team, or even 2, but he brought 16 Vault Warden teams. That's a lot of Defence 9 to crack through, though the siege bows are one of the few things with a decent chance at doing it, if they ever hit. So, for the first few turns, the dwarves just lumbered forward. I got a pretty sweet hit on the very first turn with my catapult. That splash damage potentially killing as many as 6 Vault Warden teams in one go. But just 1/2 of a team went down. It was the high defence part of that team, but I missed a great chance there to smash a few spears down on 5+. Bit of a shame, but of course this one's all about killing a secret target and protecting one as well as capturing a terrain piece, so that's not the end of the world. Having said that, I'd already sacrificed a lot of ground by standing and shooting, and despite some good attempts, I hadn't killed my target Mardin in shooting. I think I'd taken a point of fate off, but nor had I done much damage killing the front lines to allow me to crack through to get that terrain. But that shooting did do me one favour. It allowed me to engage on my terms, which did tip the balance in my favour in the initial turns. I could choose priority, I could choose the fights and get my heroes into places to give me some kind of advantage. But eventually the dwarves ground away at me, and some devastating friendly fire with my ballista wiped out my numbers advantage as well. But really this result went down to poor planning on my behalf at the start of the game. I'd chosen to protect one of my siege crew instead of the more durable and courageous ring wraith. Although I had killed my target eventually, my terrain piece was left uncaptured, though I was getting a bit closer in the final turn. Alistair had his terrain safe and sound, and my siege crews had all gone, including the key one on the very last turn to a bad courage roll. It was a 12-3 loss. Game number 2 was Maelstrom of Battle Mission Hold Ground against Dan Scott's Isengard force. Dan's a patron supporter who had access to sneak previews of this army and the video before it came out. Check out the link in the description if you want that too. I deployed my siege weapons with a big advantage, being able to cover the central objective from every single angle. My Maelstrom rolls went pretty well too, where Dan's just didn't really have to spend some might, and my first catapult shot, because I had priority, took out and knocked prone Dan's Uruk-hai ballista crew. And despite another lucky hit from the catapult knocking Saruman off his horse later on and killing plenty of Uruk-hai, this was his early dead pile. Dan was closing in on my catapult with Thryden, his Dunlan riders and some Crabane. Meanwhile, Saruman was moving my general Gothmog around like a puppet on a string, trying to get a clear shot on him with the ballista, and he certainly landed one, taking Gothmog off the Warg at one point. Alas, Thryden's assault stuttered, he failed to win some key combats against some plucky orcs, and the riders failed to charge my troll in one go, so the catapult kept up its oppressive fire. Sadly, when Isengard got to the middle, there were simply too few of them arriving there, and the Morannon horde held the centre for an 8-0 victory. The final game of day 1, and therefore the last before the most surreal night of camping I've ever had, more on that soon, and that final game was a game of Lords of Battle against Camille Domansky. So another one where I could deploy on the backline and put my siege weapons to use. I was playing against Camille's Mordor army, which would normally be the Black Gate force, but of course legions are banned at this event. I had the number advantage over him, and although shooting didn't do anything useful, it kind of did, because it successfully brought him to me and again gave me the advantage of choosing the early combats. And unlike against Ali's dwarves earlier, this time my heroes did way more work, and because he drummed his guys into me and trolls aren't affected by the orc drum, I was doing some serious damage initially before the trolls caught up. But as the game wore on, my shooting was unable to do much heavy lifting, and his heroes outfought me, especially after a Gothmog mirror match duel went Camille's way. But in the final throes of the game, when I was trailing by a couple of kills, I took a shot with a catapult into the troll, which was ready to churn through more of my Morannons and definitely win Camille an unassailable lead. The rock smushed the troll on the head and killed only one orc on each of the sides with splash damage. From there, Camille had also broken, and some of his troops started running away in the final turn, giving me a tiny advantage of 39 kills to his 37, and eventually landing me a 6-2 win. It was a fantastic game against Camille as ever. And of course, if you want to hear more from Camille, Ali or Dan from this day's gaming, then do check out Entmoot, the podcast, which will have interviews with all three of them and a little bit more of their side of the story too. What a day. After 3 2.5 hour games, there was the usual chat, pizza, a couple of beers, and the usual evening vlogging banter. B-roll! Then I followed Alex from Battle Camper into the deep, dark woods to find somewhere he said was safe to rest for the night. Little did I know what den of depravity the windy streets and country roads would take me to. There we go. Look at that. Beautiful. And Key can just wonder at the heart's content. Alright. Find somewhere to camp. Right. There's another one. Not long after we'd arrived, it quickly became clear we're not alone. No, Gollum wasn't on our tail, but we had stumbled into what appeared to be a popular dogging spot. An endless parade of cars arrived while we were setting up camp, and in case the footage of the series of car headlights descending on the woodland isn't enough evidence for you, I double-checked one of the authoritative Bibles on dogging spots, as you do, and it confirms we were indeed in the, quote, place to be.
God, now we're being illuminated.
Actually, that's fine, yeah.
Yeah, so keep the headlights on.
Keep the headlights. The strange doggers, or whatever they're doing, whoever they are. No, bring your torch back.
Don't go.
One after another they arrived, hoping for a bit of action, but were disappointed by two nerds setting up a tent in the dark.
I think he said something. Yeah, I think he is. I don't know what he said there. And the cycle starts anew.
That's it. Sick.
Woo! Hey, well done.
There were brief moments of respite.
That's a good sound.
That's a good sound. Cheers.
Cheers.
There we go. Look at that.
But we were never far away from a lewd interruption.
Lovely stuff.
I tried my best to create a wholesome camping experience.
In fact, I'm just filming you trying to start this fire. And you just can't get even 20 seconds of footage without a car like moseying up in the background.
Right, all right, Doggers, just.
Sorry, can you just give us a second, please? We're not here to have sex.
1 second.
Hey! Well done.
Three at once.
God. And then behind you as well. In the foreground, you've got this like rural camping experience. It's very rustic.
Like behind
They've got sirens blaring. It's so good. This is one of the most bizarre evenings I think I've ever had. It is so weird, isn't it?
As we hit the hay at around midnight and I sank into my sleeping bag, I thought they'd slowly dissipate.
It's another one. I'm sure they mean no harm. But, yeah, me and my tent and all these cars just keep rocking up. So hopefully that dries up and actually get some good night's sleep. It's about midnight now, or just gone midnight. The fire died out and ready for a nice relaxing night's sleep. It's nearly 2 o'clock and the constant stream of doggers is so annoying. I can't believe it's gone on this long. We've had so many. But now, I think we might have had the end of it. I don't know whether they just clock off. But it has been constant. It's amazing, they're so busy. What? All they seem to do is drive in. They're all too craven to do anything else. They just drive in, sit around in the car for 10 minutes, the engine running, and then go. Don't hear any doors opening or anything like that, or maybe once or twice. Anyway. Toy soldiers. Morning. It's 7 o'clock. The sun's just about rising, and the final dogger's just gone. It's been constant. It's ridiculous. Why don't they all just meet at the same time and actually do dogging? They all just seem to come in a loop. Ugh. Didn't sleep well at all. Oh. Just another one. Might just be dog walkers at this point, I suppose. 7 o'clock in the morning. There's a chill in the air. So I think I'm going to get a little fire going and get a cup of tea on. The birds tweeting is beautiful.
It was a bit chilly, yeah.
Finally, relaxation. It was a surreal evening, followed by an uncomfortable night's sleep, followed by a wonderful morning. Waking up with the birds tweeting and your breakfast cooking on an open fire. It really can't be beaten. But eventually I did have to get my tent packed away, my stuff in the back of the car, and ready myself for a second day's gaming at the Battle of Unnumbered Tears. While packing away my tent, I was very, very much aware that I'd lost only one game the day before. And as ever at these sorts of events, I try and aim for that positive win-loss ratio. Would it be possible today? Could my siege engines deliver? As I strolled into Sanctuary Games and swapped tales about the night's dogging adventures, I was getting ready for 3 more 1,000-point games. So to kick off day 2, I came up against my nemesis. Not the lovely Jay Davidson, but the army he was piloting, the Necromancer and company. But without the Legion bonus I usually hate, and with an added Azog, it's perhaps not as scary as the ones I've faced in the past, particularly because this was divide and conquer, so Azog started in his own corner. It meant the first few turns were cruel to Jay. My siege weapons wreaked havoc. They knocked Azog off his warg one turn and knocked him prone the next. They took Will off the Necromancer and kept knocking the Ringwraiths prone too. It slowed them down, meaning I could get my boys onto the objectives as soon as possible and try and screen them off. But the inevitable fight against Azog and his warg came. The warg did fall quickly, but Azog was reliably killing 1 or 2 orcs per turn, but having to use a might point here or there to win the fights. Eventually the Ringwraiths turned up to the centre and started their assault. I tried to avoid killing them in the early turns. As they come back on 2s, I didn't want to give them the free move to get closer to the middle. My focus was trying to get into combat with the Necromancer to stop his magic and to chip away at his huge 25 will, which of course he also uses fate points. I think this was probably one of my best performances of the weekend. I was coming up with so many creative ways to threaten the Necromancer, from throwing rocks at him with the troll who'd moved away from the catapult to try and defend against the lingering shadow, to repeatedly jumping orcs over walls, to channeling a sap will against him with my Ringwraith. It was a constant barrage of pressure on Jay. It did help that Jay's Ringwraiths were consistently rubbish. They killed way fewer orcs than they should have done, but I suppose with just 2 dual dice and no banner, and they're trying to keep their might to come back to life, I suppose they're not all that reliable at winning fights. So when it came to the end, I had more models on each objective. None of the raids had died permanently and were contesting each of them though, and Jay had also broken me and wounded Gothmog, so it ended up a 5-2 win to me in the end. Incredibly, I was going into the penultimate game of the tournament with 3 wins and just 1 loss. Could I get as many wins as I had siege weapons? Pete would be the next test for my Mordor force, and you could tell I was at the top tables based on the horrendous soupy list I was facing. Meta filth. Pete had a Dragon Emperor, Shadow Lord, Druzag, Durburs, Shelob and Bats. A memorable film moment indeed. We'd be playing Assassination, and I wouldn't be making the same mistake I had done before. So I chose to assassinate a lowly goblin captain with my Ringwraith, knowing I could fire a few black darts at him and potentially kill him in just a couple of turns. And in the early throws of the game, I accidentally softened him up a bit with a bolt thrower hit, making that job much easier for the Ringwraith. And again, I was dictating where the combats happened because of my overwhelming firepower. Even through the Shadow Lord's Pall of Darkness, my catapult was wreaking havoc. When the lines did clash, I was very careful to try and avoid any nasty hurls from Shelob, and managed to remove a substantial number of the spooky Black Num frontline with some heroic actions from Gothmog, Gurrit and the Enforcer, and of course the timely use of the Time of the Orc. Perhaps I was too gung-ho throwing heroes in so early in Assassination, but once they'd done most of the work, they were kept tucked away from the nastiest heroes like Shelob, who did eventually launch an orc down my line, knocking so much over, and forcing Gothmog into a very vulnerable position. Eventually Gothmog was killed, but being aware that I definitely had 7 points in the bag from those black darts at the Goblin Captain, it all came down to which hero Pete was after and who he was trying to kill them with. The Enforcer had died, but I'd elected to not spend his fate to ensure he didn't die at the hands of a hero. But as the game ended, Gurrit was announced as Pete's target, and he remained wounded but alive and kicking. Personally, I think Pete may have made a mistake there. Had he chosen Shelob as his assassin and one of the siege veterans as a target, it may have been easier for him to just sneak Shelob round the back and get that kill. My 10-3 victory then could have easily been very, very different. So, into the final game of the tournament. There was a very serious sounding announcement about armyless submissions, and then we began to the death. Another favourable scenario for my siege weapons. But I was up against Larry Vickers, whose horde of hobbits, backed up by elves and Boromir, Sam and Frodo from the Fellowship, scared the bejesus out of me. It was the first time an army had both blinding light and enough bow shots to really scare me in return. Larry played it excellently, forcing his huge force down one flank to increase the in the ways from my siege bows, which despite that did get some key hits. But it was the catapult, with its re-rolls to hit and scatter, which caused the most damage. Despite needing sixes, it was a constant barrage of rocks hitting, and sometimes directly hitting Larry's blinding light bubble. In the early exchanges, I'd killed a whopping 23 of his models, in exchange for just 7 lowly orcs dead to his bows as they marched up. But it wasn't just my good luck, it was Larry's awful luck. In the early combats, Boromir managed to roll a quadruple one on a key heroic combat, meaning he'd lost his horse fairly quickly, severely limiting his damage output. His army was clearly a better force than mine, but he just couldn't get any punches to land. There was some luck for Larry eventually. I charged my Ringwraith into Invisible Frodo because Wraiths don't lose will in combat against Ringbearers, but he not only lost the first fight, he also died to a 6x6 wound wall from the plucky hobbit. But it was all too little too late. My insane siege weapon hits had given me the numbers superiority, and once Gothmog had done some work, he retreated to protection by dismounting into a gap, which Larry generously allowed me to do out of sequence. It was horrendous for him. Larry was the better player with a better army list, but the dice were well and truly on my side this time for a 6-2 win. Meaning, much to my shock as much as it is to yours, no doubt, that I finished the event on 5 wins and 1 loss. I even was among 3 with the same tournament points in 3rd place, but tiebreakers put me on 5th, which is still my highest ever GBHL tournament placing.
Standings 3-2 and 1. For 3rd, we had a 3-way tie on tournament points.
Jake Rawson was 3rd in the end. Evan Iverson from the Unexpected podcast was 2nd, and the lovely Jay Acharya came 1st. You can hear about his army and how the tournament went for him in Entmoot episode 80. The link is in the description below.
Oh. What a weekend. I'm so glad I filmed all of those games, and hopefully the sort of voiceover for you has delivered on the goods of explaining just how incredible this weekend has been for me, both in terms of my luck, particularly my luck, the opponents, and just how much fun I had using ridiculous numbers of siege weapons. As you've just seen, I've managed to I really don't know. I really don't know how I've done this, but I managed to get 5th place a GBHL 100 event. This is a really big deal for me. I've never ever competed properly at GBHL 100 events and done anything particularly like this. And with a new army that is a bit ridiculous, it's fair to say luck definitely helped. Definitely helped. There was a lot of 6s rolled at times when really I shouldn't have had so many 6s, but it's really sort of a testament to the fact that I do think I'm getting better at the game. So really happy. Can't believe we got 5th, joint 3rd, and only by 8 tournament points. 8 VP difference in it. So if I'd have conceded a fewer to Ali in the first game where he beat me 12-3, or maybe just gained a couple of pips here, there, and everywhere, maybe not shot myself in the bolt thrower and all that sort of stuff. Who knows what would have happened? I could end up with a bit of silverware. Not that I'm bothered, because I definitely got lucky, and I'm really proud of my achievement nonetheless. So that's the weekend. From camping, fending off the doggers, to coming 5th in a tournament with 3 siege bows and a catapult. It's certainly one of the best GBHL tournaments I've ever had. It's been fantastic. So now, gotta get home. Right, let's crack on.
What a wild ride! What started out as an intention to make a standard tournament vlog has taken me from 3D printers and scrubbing paint off Dettol in my sink to a 5th place in a competitive SBG event, all via a camping experience like no other at the dogging capital of Nottinghamshire. It's been bonkers. I hope you've enjoyed it. There'll be more on this tournament in the Entmoot podcast soon, and if you want more stuff like this, comment below, subscribe and join the Patreon scheme to support the channel, see things in advance, get swag, and for some behind the scenes access to what I'm planning next. Big thank you to Alex from Battle Camper for sharing footage and for suggesting the dogging woodland. His video will be more amusing than mine, so check out his video about his Isengard army. Until next time, thanks for watching.